But welcome to our broadcast. Today's topic will be MiYO color application on InSync paste glaze. So why don't we go ahead and get started. So this is a continuation of the last one we had, MiYO color application on InSync paste glaze, tips and techniques. But before, we had the InSync paste glaze. So again, I want you to use a non-metallic spatula. We have color on the right, the glaze paste on the left. So we're going to mix up our paste glaze. I want you to mix it up every day just to make sure it's a nice homogeneous mix. You know, if it's in a jar, I usually use about a 3, 4, 5-second mix because usually you're using it all the time so it doesn't get too thick. It shouldn't. And then I'll always refresh what I have in my little well in my tray right here. I would suggest you don't work right out of the jar all the time because it dries out and it gets dirt in it and things like that. And here we have our shade A. And again, for best results, if you take it out of a jar, about a 4 to 6 second mix and about 2 or 3 seconds if you're putting it in a well. So I'll put a little bit here in the shade A well. Wipe off my spatula. Again, a non-metal spatula, because as much as you're going to be mixing this every day, even just a little bit, you'll get metal particles in there. I want you to use the InSync glaze liquid because if you use a high fusing liquid, when it fires, it'll be kind of a smoky battleship gray. Use a number 1 brush. Number 1 brush is about the same size brush as far as size as you'll see in like a nail polish dispenser. I get a little glaze liquid in it, and I'll dispense some of the paste glaze on a flat surface. Now your paste glaze is going to be about the consistency of a thick honey, and that's going to be a little bit too thick to apply easily. So I get just a little bit of my InSync paste glaze liquid, and I just pat it down, now just enough to get it to flow. If it's too thick like you saw in the last video, it goes on kind of like sour cream, but we want to have it just a smooth, even coat. Think of this like a nail and somebody's having nail polish put on. So just a gentle, even coat. Shouldn't take you more than about 6 seconds to cover a tooth. Okay, I'll dispense with a metal spatula, but with mixing, it's a whole different animal. So I get a little bit of my shade A there. I like to get a little bit of Clementine, and I'm just wiping it off with a tissue in between. Nothing, no big deal. And again, all these are about the consistency of about honey or molasses. And I never get it thinner than that in the wells because what'll happen is it'll fall out of suspension if you get it too thin. I'll get these little bits that I'm dispensing here, and this is about the size of a hole punch piece of paper, like if you're punching holes in notebook paper. A little bit of coral there for a mamelon effect. And I can always put just a little bit of the InSync glaze liquid in there with my brush and just kind of pat it. And when you see it start to move, kind of jiggle just a little bit to where it'll flow, you want to stop. You don't want to over thin this. So I'm going to use my MiYO number 2 brush. It's about the size of a 00 brush from an art supply. Remember, the MiYO colors do not like water because it'll make them cloudy. They'll fire okay, but you won't know what they're going to be. But the InSync paste glaze liquid will be perfect. So it's just thin enough for the application ease and to make sure they're the right transparency or opacity for the job you're trying to accomplish. So there's a coral, and next I'm going to go to the spring halo. So I'm not thinning these down very much. I'm just thinning them down enough to where they're not going to go on like a paste. You know, it's hard to paint with peanut butter. So we want to have these just thinned down just barely enough. So A, Clementine, Storm, coral, in the spring. So I get a little glaze liquid with the brush because we want to have just a little bit on the brush so it'll act as a release agent. And I want to swipe it so we keep the colors on the outside of the brush bristles. We don't want them inside or else it won't release. And we want to use a real nice, even, gentle application. And try to keep it as parallel as you can. Think about playing cards if you're sliding one playing card on top of another one. The more even you have it, the more gentle the stroke, and you're going to find it slides right off the brush, and it'll give you a nice gradient type effect where you can fade the colors in. You can always add a little bit more if you want to, or you can go down to a smaller brush to pull color in certain areas if you miss it. Sometimes I'll go to the MiYO 1 brush, which is like a 5-0 type brush. There's the MiYO 1 brush right there. So I can do this now very parallel. At the very most, I'm probably 5 or 10 degrees. But the more close to parallel you are, the easier it'll be. And when I'm trying to do a small effect, I use a small brush. So if you get too much on your brush, you can put a little bit on your nail, slides right off. And again, I clean the brush in water, I wipe it in tissue, and then I put a little glaze liquid in it, just enough to get it damp. And you want to keep this storm, if you get it too wet, it'll spread. It'll be kind of like putting a drop of food coloring in water on a paper towel. So you want to keep it just a little bit thick, kind of like a nail polish type consistency. Again, too thin and it'll want to run. Now there's paste glaze on this entire surface, so the minute the color touches the paste glaze, sticky likes to stick to sticky. Now I have my window above the incisal edge, so now I'm going to do some lobes here. I'm using the same storm. I get a little bit on the tip and I touch the blue-gray line I already have in a perpendicular fashion and I pull it back, just like a hot glue would string from a hot glue gun. I can take it and touch it and pull it back and it gives me a nice little line. Now if I find my lines are a little bit too thick, I can always clean my brush, get some glaze liquid in it, and dress up those lines. So here's a little bit of coral. And I don't want to get it way too thin, but I have it thinned down a little bit more than the storm, and it glides right off the brush and gives me a mamelon color. And here I'm coming back with the halo spring. Now this is, you're drizzling it just like icing on the facial incisal edge. And remember, there's paste glaze on that edge, so all I have to do is just lightly touch it, just kiss it with the tip of the brush, and that color slides right off. The main thing to remember is do not be heavy-handed. Just let this material slide off the brush. It's like a fountain pen. Not like a ballpoint, but more like a fountain pen. So you just let the color touch the paste glaze, and it wants to slide off. And that's why you don't want the color in the bristles. So if you find the colors wanting to stick to the brush and not slide off, clean your brush in water, wipe it on a tissue, and get a little bit of glaze liquid in it, and it'll slide right off. Now in those blue lobe type effects, I'm using an endo file right here just to push a little bit of that spring halo. Give it a little bit more of vitality right there so it looks like it's going in the lobes in between the mamelons. Real light touch. Never get crazy. Always be gentle with this. And if you do anything wrong, you can always wipe it off. Now if you're trying to erase anything, I've always said to clean the brush and get a little glaze liquid in, but if you use a dry brush, it'll grab the color or grab the paste glaze, and you can see me wiping it right off the zirconia. This is a zirconia restoration. So this is the Clementine. Clementine's great for fissures, to give like a dentin type effect. It's good for root sections. It's kind of a tangerine, kind of a translucent tangerine color with just the slightest hint of a walnut brown in it. So it's really good for central fossa areas and posteriors. It's good for root sections because it's translucent. So I put a little hypocalcification at the edge of the CEJ or cemento-enamel junction. And again, it slides right off. Now I normally use my enamel mix because it's very subtle, 5 parts lumen, 1 part linen, and about 1/3 of a part of snow. Make sure you mix up those colors before you dispense. And then I take that edge of the white and I pull it down. Now when this fires, this will be very, very subtle. It'll just give a slight translucent glow right at this edge right here. It'll be very translucent. But you see it kind of differentiates the root section, just gently. So if I want to do some hypocalcification, again, I can do the same thing, and that is use my enamel mix, but this will be very, very faint. If you want more of a hypocalcified look where you can see it, instead of using 5 lumen, 1 linen, and about 1/3 of a part of snow, you see here I said clean the brush and get some glaze liquid in there also to grab it. But you might want to use a little bit more linen and just a little bit more snow. And when I say a little bit more, I mean instead of 1/3 of a part of snow, maybe 1/2 a part of snow, and maybe another 1/3 of a part of linen, because you don't want your hypocalcification to be very dramatic. Never use snow straight. Snow straight you can see for miles. It's very, very bright, very opaque. So we're just trying for a little bit of a subtle effect right here. So honestly, this is about all there really is to do to something like this. You apply a thin parallel application of the InSync paste glaze, and remember to keep it just thin enough to get it to flow. So you want to keep it thick enough to where it doesn't want to ball up. And then your colors, you can thin them down if you want to, and they'll stick to it without drifting. You could put this crown on a Siger peg and come back an hour later and it wouldn't have moved. None of the color. So we'll get a little bit different angle of the light so you can see. You can notice the halo effect, the translucent window, the lobes, the mamelon color there, hypocalcification, and a root section. To do this from start to finish, if your colors are laid out, is about a 2 to 3 minute process, depending upon how much you're putting into it. But very, very quick, and the nice thing is, it's WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Remember to be delicate and to take the time to learn how to do this. It's really an easy material to use. So, if you still have questions, call our technical department at 800-528-5531 for further assistance. Make sure to follow Jensen Dental on Facebook and Instagram so you can be updated every time we go live. And you can also visit jensendental.com/MiYO to learn more about MiYO. Thanks for watching today, and please click the follow button to get notifications of future MiYO education tips and tricks. This has been Terry McQuiston for Jensen, wishing you a great day. And if there's something, let me see, it says always pick up something new. Thanks. Well, good. I'm really glad you said that. We're here for you. Always feel free to contact us. Never suffer in silence, because there's a way to fix everything, and this is a great product. Thanks for your time today, everybody.